The AllStar app, the #1 app in the business. UFC, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, and more. Get the app right now. Link in description. All right, Dalton, let's get into it, man. Bellator 289, you're back in action. You're going to face Anthony Adams. He's sitting at number 10. A lot of people thought you would be fighting someone else, man. Tell us the method behind this madness.
So I was actually supposed to be fighting someone else. They had me lined up to fight in November against John Salter. For whatever reason, he wasn't able to do the fight, so they offered me a guy named Imam Shafi, and if you were watching the card, you saw he fought against somebody else. To my knowledge, they just, like, after that guy turned me down, I thought, like, the fight was just scrapped. So about a week later, I see on the Bellator app that kid's still fighting against somebody else. So I call my manager. I'm like, yo, they said that I'm not fighting until next year, but this guy that turned me down is fighting November 18th still. I'm like, what's up with that? He's like, hold on. Let me call Kogan and see what was going on. So he called me back, and he's like, yeah, it was budget issues, blah, blah, blah. So, and they were contractually obligated to get this guy a fight this year. So they're pushing me back till next year. And he was like, but since he's like, you do make a good point, you shouldn't be getting punished or pushed back because somebody else turned you down. So he's like, so they got an opening December 9th in Connecticut, but it's a prelim fight, and they didn't offer it to you in the first place because they didn't want you to feel burned by putting you on the prelims. Those are his exact words. And I said, I don't care. You know, as long as I'm getting to fight, as long as I get to be active, fight 3 times this year, fight before the holidays, get to enjoy myself, you know, and take a little bit of rest some injuries and stuff that I've had over the course of the year and that have been nagging me. And, you know, I was just happy to fight. And nonetheless, we ended up getting elevated to the main card anyway, so it all worked out.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, with you in your last fight, right, and you finishing Romero Cotton and you being undefeated, you're on this like upward trajectory, right? So fighting back didn't make sense to a lot of people, and a lot of people was like, even to me, man, I was like, man, this guy deserves even a Musasi. Like I could have seen you fighting him next.
Yeah. I don't know what Bellator's plans are, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, even though I'm self-employed, I don't fight unless they give me a fight, you know what I mean? And the name that they offered me is who I sign at the end of the day. And they, like I said, they had me John Salter, but for whatever reason, he turned me down. He's ranked number 3. Fabian Edwards is fighting in Milan on October 29th, so that was out of the question as well. And then Tokov has the next title shot. So, like you said, that only left Musasi, but I don't think they were planning that at all. You know, I don't know what they have planned for him next, or if he's fighting Romero after Nemkov, or if he's going to get a rematch for the title after Johnny beats Tokov. I mean, I don't know. So I can't speak for that. And, I mean, whenever I was looking at the rest of the weight class, I'm looking, Austin's ranked number 7. I already beat Romero. Lorenz Larkin moved down to 170. So there really wasn't anybody for me to fight, you know. So number 10 it is, you know what I mean? That was the best they could do right now with, you know, the layout they were given.
For sure. Do you see Musasi coming back? You know, he's getting up there in age, and you know he's had a lot of fights. He's been around for longer than anybody.
I don't know, man. I feel like if that were me, I would want to try and get that back. You know, not that he's gonna win a rematch, but I would at least, you know, want to try and get that back. But I mean, I don't know. That's him, and whatever he's doing with whatever his plans are. I mean, I'm sure we'll find out soon enough.
For sure. And Tokov, do you feel like he's like the clear next contender in line for the belt?
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been hearing, and that's pretty much what they're working on. Um, you know, I mean, what? How many wins does he have in Bellator? 7.
Yeah, he's up there. Yeah.
Yeah, so same as me. What is he? Is he 6-1 or 7-0 in Bellator?
Man, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I don't know either. Now, given my first 3 fights were developmental fights, but that aside, I mean, me and him are on the, you know, longest win streaks in the entire division, besides the champ, Johnny Eblen. So, you know, with my first couple fights being developmental fights, and him being 7-0, all, you know, contender fights, I think it's fair to say that he should be next in line, uh, logistically. But in the rankings, he's ranked fourth in my mind. He should be ranked first or second. But those rankings are still working themselves out a little bit.
For sure. And your last fight against Romero Cotton, you got that third round finish. Do you go back and study the first 2 rounds before you got the finish? And what are you looking for when you do study your own fights?
So when I watch the fight back, the first thing I'm looking for is just mistakes that I made, like where I was getting hit, where I wasn't landing my shots, and why I wasn't landing, or why I was being countered, or why I was just being hit straight up. That's my first takeaway. My next is, like, if I'm watching it, like let's say I'm preparing for a next fight like I am right now, I go back and watch my recent films to see, what would my opponent try to pick up off my film that he can game plan against me and try to use it against me. And so I'm looking at it kind of from his point of view, and whatever I find, whatever I think that, the holes that I'm seeing on my own film, watching as somebody else, not myself, that I try to fix those holes for the fight coming up. So whatever game plan he has in place, it's not going to work.
Have you ever noticed like an opponent, you faced where like, study your film and then when you get into the fight against your upcoming opponent, you see like them trying to take advantage of something that you saw in your previous fight, the mistake that you might have made?
Yeah. For example, when I fought Dwayne Johnson, and it wasn't just from what I was seeing, he was backing up in the cage and trying to lure me into shooting against the cage just because I was shooting there a lot in my fight previous to that. But if you would have went and watched my fights before that, I was shooting in the open as well. And I was throwing a lot of the strikes, kicks, spinning wheel kicks, whatever. The stuff that I was landing in the fight actually landed a Superman punch on him too, but it wasn't as flush as against Romero Cotton. These are things that I was doing in my fights prior to that, but you could tell these guys are only watching one fight back, or they're not studying as well because they're prepared for like one thing. And you could hear his coaches in the corner saying, "It's coming, it's coming." Like I listen to my opponent's coaches a lot whenever they're saying like, "Oh, if they're telling them like," because a lot of times people are pretty basic. They'll be like, "Oh, the 1-2's there," So I'm like, "Okay, I'm waiting for the 1-2." Parry, slip, boom, counter. And they're like, "Oh, the shot's coming, the shot's coming." Okay, I'm gonna fake it. He bites on it hard, boom. Catch him up top. So I try to use everything to my advantage. I feel like I have a fight IQ, or a high fight IQ. I feel like that I study film very well, that I break it down very well, and I think that's an advantage that I have in this game against a lot of other fighters. A lot of other fighters think just because they're skilled that that's enough alone, and it's not.
Yeah, that's interesting, man, that you say you listen to your opponent's corner and you do hear them shouting out instructions, and it's like, do they not know that the other guy can hear what's gonna happen? I mean, like you said, you can react to it.
I think that comes down to coaching at the end of the day. I think some of these coaches need to look back at themselves and like really kind of evaluate how they're coaching when the fight's going on. Because, not all guys are listening to the opponent's corner. Some guys don't even listen to their own corner, But for me, I take every single little advantage that I can, watching film up to the fight, watching my own mistakes, working on my own mistakes, working on my game plan that I plan to use against my opponent. And then when I'm watching these film on him, like I see what tells, like, is he loading up on shots? What's he doing before he's throwing the jab? Is he kind of like, is he bringing, like a lot of guys, whenever they throw a jab, they don't just throw it straight out. A lot of them like if you watch it in slow motion, it's kind of like this and then out. They're kind of like loading it, So like anytime I see this movement during the fight, I'm like, okay, the jab's coming, or the hook. That's just one example. I could get super technical with it and super detailed, but I look for stuff like that. And then also I try to listen to their coaches, One thing I noticed about my opponent coming up is his coaches have codes. So they're not just yelling out 1-2. They're yelling out, like, I have to go back and listen or watch with the volume on again, but they call out codes. This might not be one of the words that they use, but like for football, we used to call it like Lucy for like left side, or, for the weak side, we would start something with the word W or whatever. And his coaches seem to be calling out codes like that so that their opponent doesn't hear. So obviously his coaches are a little bit ahead of the game in that aspect. But so I'm not going to be expecting to hear any 1-2s or anything like that. But a lot of the time these coaches do just, keep it simple, and then it ends up costing their fighter at the end of the day.
And then you're keeping 1 foot ahead of them by learning their codes. So they have to switch codes every fight if they want to keep ahead of you. You know what I mean? That's how it's got to start working now, right? The game is advancing so fast.
Yeah, well, hopefully he doesn't watch this interview, because I plan on studying those codes, see what he throws right after they call it.
For sure, for sure. And what do you think of his skill set, Adams, man, when you break it down?
He's good. He's a good fighter. He's athletic. He has a quick jab. Pretty good striker, but he has a lot of holes in his games. He throws lazy kicks sometimes. Sometimes he throws things one at a time, leaves himself to be open to be countered. Sometimes when he throws kicks, he drops his hands a lot. A lot of fighters do that, but he tends to do it a lot. And a lot of his combinations are predictable in the aspect that he throws whenever he does start opening up his hands and stuff, because he likes to throw one at a time. Whenever he catches his range, then he starts opening up. But a lot of the combinations he throws them over and over and over again. He might throw a combo, and then he'll throw like a 1, then he'll throw a 1-2, then he throws the same combo again. Then he throws a leg kick or a high kick, and then a body kick, and then he throws the same combo again. So I'm expecting things to be different. I'm not banking on what I'm seeing on film to be what's presented to me on fight night, but I think it's a good template for what could be. So I'm definitely using it as a base, but at the end of the day, I know that the coaches are probably going to switch it up. They're probably not going to be using the same codes. They're probably going to be switching up the game plan based on my strengths and my weaknesses. So I got to adapt as the fight goes, and I've done that every fight so far, so it's not going to be a problem.
When you look at the danger level of Adams, when you compare it to, let's say, your last 4 opponents, is he more dangerous? Is he less?
It's almost non-existent. If you look at Dwayne Johnson, he had a few pretty slick submission finishes. You look at Romero Cotton, he finished all but one of his fights. You look at Tony Johnson, my 5th fight. He world champion level kickboxer Joe Schilling, he fought him and flatlined him. Caught him with a hook, knocked him clean out, crumbled him. You know what I mean? Ty Gorder, knocking people out with flying knees, super explosive. Now don't get me wrong, this guy probably has, knockout power. He's an 85-pounder. We're wearing 4-ounce gloves. It's probably there. You know what I mean? But as for him using it and utilizing it, I don't see him doing it that often. Not to say that he won't try this fight, but a lot of the time he fights cautious. And, whether he fights cautious or whether he's going for the kill and trying to go for a knockout, I'm ready either way. So I'm not going to, like I said, same thing with the film. I'm not going to bank on something being pretty much like the gospel of what he's going to do. It's nothing's for sure, but I'm ready for both. You know what I mean? I'm always ready for the what ifs.
When Austin Vanderford was lined up to fight him, were you training with Austin to prepare for him?
No, Austin was training with Gleico Franca a lot, who I was sparring with a little bit, but I've done some sparring with Sabah Hamasi. I've done some sparring with Roman Ferraldo. I've done some sparring with Artem Levin, world champion kickboxer, one of the greatest of all time. I've done some sparring with Johnny Eblin, the current 85-pound champ. I was doing all different types of styles, all different types of strikers, even some wrestlers. They're grapplers. I was sparring with everybody, and in this camp, I feel like that actually helped me more. Because every single week, whenever I change a sparring partner, I have to adapt to a new style. I got used to something the week before, and then I started doing very well with it. And then next thing you know, boom, it changed up the following week. So I had to adapt again. And, I think that's going to even help me prepare better for Adams in the aspect that, like I told you, that I'm ready for multiple versions of him. With the way I've been sparring with different people and the way I've had to adapt, it's going to just lead to me adapting in the fight if he does change anything up.
When you're facing a guy that's orthodox and you're focused on facing sparring partners that are orthodox the whole camp, and you don't switch it up and face somebody that's a southpaw, and then you go into a fight and then the dude comes out southpaw, how messed up can that be for a guy?
It could throw some guys off. It's not going to throw me off. I fought several southpaws throughout my career. Dwayne Johnson was a southpaw. Ty Gorder was a southpaw. I fought a few southpaws as an amateur. I fought southpaws in boxing. I sparred with several southpaws. Southpaws never been an issue for me. If anything, southpaws are easier. You know, uh, I mean, one of my best punches is my right hand, my right uppercut. All that opens up the door whenever they're in southpaw.
How do you top the last performance, man? I felt like, that last performance was somewhat flawless, man. It was a really good performance. Do you see yourself topping that, or are you not even focused on that? You're just going into this fight to just win.
I'm not focused on that. It would be nice to get another highlight reel finish like that. And the goal is to get a finish. I want to go back to my finishing ways, but I'm not going to be sitting here predicting a round or predicting how I'm going to finish them. I'm just saying that I'm going to finish them because that's my goal, and I got to get back to my finishing ways before I start making bold predictions like that. But that being said, the earlier in the fight, the better.
Do you feel like a lot of fighters, they put too much pressure on themselves by calling finishes, and they get into the fight and they can panic, right? If they're not finishing the fight, or not, they don't see ways to finish the fight.
Yeah, for sure. And some fighters really do. They're like they say something. They're so set on like I got to make this happen. I got to make this happen, and they start making mistakes, or they empty their gas tank too early because they said it was going to be in the first round, and then it doesn't happen, and then they're shot. For me, I don't really care because at the end of the day, I'm going to be patient, and whenever the opportunity presents itself, I'm going to take it. So it's going to be patient, 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 boom, patient, 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 boom, and then anytime an opportunity presents itself, I'm going to go for it, relentlessly. But I'm waiting for the opportunity to present itself. So you got to be patient in this game. You can't just go hunting heads, the whole entire time, and that's what a lot of guys do. Some guys I feel like do predict their fights, and they don't even care if they're right or not. They just do it to get into their opponents ahead. So I feel like some people do that, but some people try to be like Conor McGregor and, try to get clout off of predicting their fights and trying to make it in the same exact time that they called it.
All right, December 9th, Bellator 289. Go in the descriptions, download the AllStar app. Dalton, thank you so much, man, for the time, and all the best in this fight.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it.